All right, I'd like to go to the question sheets we have. We have Marie and Sal Belomo. Followed by Loretta Frisco and Michael Alvoconi. Just want to line up, please.
Yeah. I have two sons. My 17-year-old is in McGowan, and I have a 9-year-old. My 17-year-old went to Catholic school all the way up to public high school. We heard that public school was very good, so we put our 9-year-old in the public school. Now I'm considering putting my kid back in Catholic school because of the school program. Last week, me and my wife went to Catholic school to inquire about putting in John Catholic school. They said that they were going to the school program as well, but they said that if the kid does fail the test, that they do look at his profile as well. They won't just leave him back because he failed the test. I gotta tell you, my kid, he woke up 3 o'clock in the morning. He forgot a math question, and he was scared shit. He was no. I mean, the other kid, he's having panic attacks. You go to the teachers in the school. The teachers in the school are saying, there's no way these kids are going to pass this test. Your teachers are not telling these kids. Like you said, they could, we're going to nurture it. They don't want it, the teachers. The teachers are like, that's not an answer I want to hear from the teacher. There's no way these kids are going to pass this test. That's what they keep saying. We don't want this. It's, it's through the state. There's just not an answer we want to hear. I'm considering taking my kid out of the public school system for that. And I'm paying $300 a month for a tutor. And some of these parents, what about parents that don't have the money to do that? When I heard Obama's name with this, I knew it was just going to be all bad.
Let me just respond. So, first of all, let me just, again, thank you for being here, and I hear what you're saying. I think that I want to be really clear that one, it won't just be based on the exam that the decisions are
That's
made.
what they're telling us, though.
Okay,
They
but
told me if he does not pass the math test, he's getting left back.
So why does he do anything else in school then?
What is the rest of the year? He's good at reading, he's passing all his tests, he's bad in math. What school?
I was told if my child does not pass the math test,
one second.
I just want an answer for that.
It's all the schools telling the children that, not just the ESS.
Can I just try to answer the question and then?
I really want that answer.
So we always look at a combination of the exam and where there's a kid who has not taken the exam or where they haven't done well on the exam. We also look at the student portfolio in order to decide on promotion. And I want to reassure you that it's not just based on the exam. And this is you're correct.
Not telling us that.
You're correct. That is not the right thing that you were told. And I appreciate your coming here tonight. If you look at the public document that I mentioned that's on the website, it also says the same thing.
Also, Superintendent Claudia said that she would address everything with your school, so if you want to move on to your question.
If the child goes to summer school, if
Steve,
they're
can I microphone?
in the bottom 10% and they go to summer school. Now, it was my understanding that they take the test again.
Yeah,
Okay. You just said 10 minutes ago that the results aren't until July. How are we sending my kids to summer school, our children to summer school, if you don't have the results?
It's a state test, not a state test.
So let me explain it again. Yeah, it's a fair question. Let me explain it
I mean,
again.
you get like this, a pass or a fail, and then you don't know the
explain.
exact numbers? Please.
So here's how it'll work. We score the exams here in the city, and we know how many kids got questions right and wrong and how many questions they got right and how many they got wrong. Then the state takes that information and they compare it to all of the students across the state, and they set the passing line for level 1, level 2, level 3, level 4. And that's the information we get back at the end of July, beginning of August. We will have at the end of May, though, how many questions were right and wrong on each kid's test. And so we can see who's in the bottom 10% of performance in terms of how many questions you got right and wrong. And that's the decision about who are the kids that need the most support. And I expect it'll be a similar profile of students that have gone in the past. Now, in the event that you do go to summer school, then the city has an exam that kids can use to be promoted. There is also a promotional portfolio
So it's not the
that
same
is
exact test?
not the same exact test. And there's also a promotional portfolio that gets reviewed in August in concert with that exam. So if you pass the exam, then you're fine. If you didn't, then we look at your portfolio and see if there's evidence that you've learned enough to go on to the next grade. The reason to hold a kid back is not because they didn't meet the college readiness bar on this new exam. The reason to hold a kid back is if they're really struggling to meet the basic standards of their grade and they need that extra support of another year.
I just don't understand where third grader, my third grader was doing algebra, and I'm sure a lot of you have.
That's right.
I mean, my high school son had to help him. He's like, Ma, I have no idea. You're saying they're not doing, fifth grade's not doing eighth grade. I beg to differ. These children are struggling. Now, what happens when suppose they don't pass in August, and they don't pass again next year? Are we going to have, 10-year-olds in the third grade? 11-year-olds in the third grade still because they can't pass this test?
Well, let me be clear that you don't have to pass the test to be promoted. You can also be promoted if the work that you've developed either during the year or during the summer is strong enough to show that you're ready to move on to the next level. And that's an evaluation that is made by the principal, and then the superintendent has oversight and looks at those portfolios as well. Now, if a student does get held back, it's because we have a real concern about whether they are going to be able to keep up with their peers, and we want to give them more support. We also, in an event, there are sometimes a few kids who, and this has been an issue historically, who don't pass the next year. And it's not automatic that you get held back again. The superintendent then looks with special care at kids that are multiple holdovers, because we want to make a good educational decision for that child and figure out, is it in the kid's interest? Because we don't want to have kids get too old for their grade and not be with their peers. And so that's something that we treat very carefully. And that was a change that we made last year, actually, because we were hearing exactly this concern. And so we've given superintendents and principals more power to recommend that, you know what, even though this kid isn't meeting the bar here, I think it's in their best interest to stay with their grade level, and they're showing enough promise that they can make it.
So Shael,
That's how it works.
could I ask if then, if what you're saying is the DOE is making the statement that they're finally moving away from using the New York State assessment as a 100% bar on whether there's going to be a promotion of a child? Is that criteria?
It's not actually ever been 100% bar. It's there's always been this portfolio prior to the process since this promotion policy has been in place. I think that many people don't know about it because they haven't ever had a student that struggled enough, but there has always been this portfolio piece as part of the process.
Good evening, Loretta Frisco. It seems to me that the test is a little premature since the curriculum for Common Core hasn't been implemented during the child's career. The fourth grade test should measure achievement in grades K through 4, not just 8 months of the fourth grade test. It seems to me that education is cumulative. It's not 8 months. Teachers are aware, I'm a former teacher, teachers are aware of the phenomenon that children who are confronted with test material that they cannot handle, and in this case have never been taught, give up and put their number 2 pencils down. This year may even be worse, as some of the test questions are being field tested for the benefit of Pearson, not for the benefit of kids. So those tests, they can be a bit harder and a bit challenging, and teachers don't know the material of the field tested questions, so they cannot even teach the material. Personally, I think the test is a cruel disservice to children. The question that I have is, you did address the issue of a child opting out of the test. What I was wondering is, will it negatively impact the school? In other words, in the school report card, will it affect the district's financial allocations? If high-scoring kids opt out of the test, refuse to take the test, call it what you will, how will the school's rating be affected? And we're all concerned about the school's rating because if their ratings fall, we all know what happens, schools are closed. The efforts of the DOE has put nothing but fear in children and staff. And fear is one thing that I think we try to keep out of the classroom. I'm a former teacher. The classroom to me was to be a loving and a nurturing environment. Children are not numbers, but they are beginning to see themselves as that. I volunteer in the program, and children tell me, I'm a 2, I'm a 3, I'm a 4. And I think to myself, you're a person, but no, they see themselves as numbers. The DOE recognizes the fear on kids. You've been talking about that yourself, and I'm not blaming you for it. I understand that you're trying to improve education. I think it's just the wrong path that you're taking. And the teachers will be judged by the scores, maybe not this year, but next year. And the community fears that their schools will be closed. I've lived for a while in the museum world, and I know that if we try to do programs in February and March, teachers will not allow us into their classrooms because they're doing test prep. That's what they do, nothing else.
So on the question about funding impact, there should not be a negative funding impact that's connected to this. The only funding impact that is connected to the state exams is schools that are in the bottom tier of schools across New York State are eligible for additional funding if they fall into those bottom tiers for support to improve the school. In terms of the accountability for the city's progress report, we don't anticipate that this would impact that. Although, you know, if the scenario came about where there were a lot of kids who don't have scores in the school and the only scores that are available are scores from the lower performing kids in that school because all of the higher performing kids didn't take it, then it would impact the grades that they would get. It wouldn't lead to a closure though, because a closure is first of all, a very rare occurrence. It happens in about 2%. Actually, yes, lately.
How many schools have been closed since the mayor has taken control?
Let me finish.
We're not a closure issue, we're a common core issue.
Well,
Let
if the state...
me finish. About less than 2% of schools are impacted by that decision in any given year, and it's quite rare. And most schools that are struggling, and there usually are about 200 to 300 that are on our list that we have concerns about performance, never get closed. What we work on is professional development with that staff and bringing additional leadership support into the school. Where a school has struggled for a really long time, we aren't seeing the potential to improve it. What happens is we actually give a new team of teachers an opportunity to start fresh. And that strategy has really created many very, very successful schools around the city. And it's worked well to create new options for kids and for parents. So we can debate that another evening, but I want to reassure people that even though there's a stereotype out there that all the department cares about is numbers, all that we care about is tests, all that we care about is the data, that is not true. I am in every single one of those decisions where there's an intervention in a school that we consider low performing, and we look at that from a qualitative angle in terms of what's happening across classrooms in the school. And when we look at classrooms, we are particularly looking at how engaged are kids. Are they getting rich work that encourages creativity and critical thinking? And those are the kinds of practices that would give a school a leg up. If we saw their data was bad, but we saw that kids are really engaged and excited about learning, that would be a school that we would not close. And there have been many like that who have had low data, but the reason they had low data was because they weren't really focusing on the exams as their primary focus in some instances, and they were focusing on something else that was working for kids. And those schools have never been closed. So I think that people need to really look at what the goal here is. Our goal is not to punish people. Our goal is to try and figure out how do we take, in many parts of our city, schools that were neglected, where there was not attention to whether or not kids were learning, where there was not support for teachers, and actually bring them back to life. And those schools that are now thriving, that have people banging down the door to get in, are schools that were created on these principles. And, you know, I think that the other thing that you raised about test prep in the spring and the challenge that teachers have with balancing that with other instruction, there definitely are schools where that is the norm, and I have been working hard to try and push our principals away from that. And as I said to the earlier speaker, if we have not got the balance right in terms of what we're saying, the supports and resources, go online and look at the Common Core aligned units, look at the Sharps unit, and tell me that that isn't an interesting and productive use of time for kids. The model curriculum that we are sharing with people is rich and creative